So Rotten Tomatoes critics is hitting at 61%. Audience has a 59%. IMDb clocking in at 6.7 out of 10. My official synopsis is Ridley Scott takes us through the professional career of one of the world's greatest conquerors.
Your official synopsis.
Yeah, I wrote that myself, Ricky Flex. How do you think it was?
How short and sweet.
Yeah, I think I should do this for other podcasts. Write the synopses and make it 1 to 2 sentences.
I like it. Keep it under 20 words.
Under 20 words, and make it a tweet. Just make it a tweet. Maybe that'll be my thing. Like, okay, here,
tweet.
If you're looking to do a movie review, here is a 1-sentence synopsis. I think that's not a bad idea for maybe a trend I can put on Twitter.
This is a great, easy start. It's about Napoleon. That's it.
Yeah,
everyone knows Napoleon.
Yeah, honestly, I'll there is some creativity that can be mixed in here. But right now, let's just play the hits. Let's be basic bitches here, and let's get to this movie. So, initial reactions, Ricky Flicks. Did this live up to the hype? Joaquin's one of TDI's favorite actors. Ridley Scott, I don't know where he lies with you, but I respect him. I like a lot of his work. But like I said before, some of his recent stuff, it seems like he's just throwing stuff at the wall a little bit, a lot more fun than it is like creating a more cohesive film, maybe something that belongs in his earlier filmography. But what were your reactions to Napoleon?
Yeah, so high expectations going in. Incredibly high. You have Joaquin playing someone who, because there's been Napoleon movies in the past. You had Waterloo, you had a couple others. You have a 1927 silent film there that's highly regarded. So it's been done. But if you could say Joaquin looks like this historical figure, who would you pick? You would probably pick Napoleon,
Mm-hmm.
And he, again, like you said, he's one of, if not the best working actor. Definitely psychological, physically the best actor in that regard, in my opinion. So I got pretty excited again with a character or a person, real human, who's, in your words, one of the most important historical figures that we've ever seen in the world. And honestly, has had some crazy, crazy, crazy moments where Ridley Scott movie, holy crap, he could put it on a visual display for us, because Ridley Scott, what do we know him as? He is he basically changed the sci-fi action movies. Alien 1979, Blade Runner. So visually stunning. They're so important to him. It's undeniable. Just a big spectacle. He always brings us big spectacles as a director, right? And he obviously loves to work, and he takes pride in his work most of the time, I would say. So with this project, I had the highest expectations, even after House of Gucci, because remember, we still had The Last Duel. The Last Duel, I would put in the top 10 for a Ridley Scott movie. And that was just a couple years ago.
So I think it's better than all three. When you put these three movies in a bundle, I'll take The Last Duel, I think, over these two.
Easily. So I still had high expectations. And this, my initial reaction to answer your question, was just I enjoyed my time at the theater, but this was not a movie as much as just a series of events. This is just telling us what happened through his life. And I don't know, I was listening to a lot of Ridley Scott comments this week and all his interviews and basically promoting this movie. And he's like, I really want to do a character study of Joaquin, of Napoleon and his love interest, or his wife, Josephine, right? And yeah, we get a lot of rom-com type of banter between the two, but what's the takeaway at the end from Napoleon? And we don't really have one. And the movie's called Napoleon, not what happened in France from the French, around the French Revolution. It's called Napoleon. So I just thought it was just a kind of again, I enjoyed my time. It's just compared to the expectations I have. That's why I said it. I have to alter my expectations of Ridley Scott movies going forward. I really do. I think this was the final step, the final stone for me, where it's you know what? He's gonna give us something where it's gonna be awesome to watch, but I should not consider him an Oscar-worthy director anymore.
So you have the expectations of, this is the guy who did Gladiator. And so you're oh my God, I think we're going to see some awesome spectacles you're talking about. We're going to see the Battle of Waterloo. We're going to see the Battle of Austerlitz. We're going to get the Siege of Toulon. We're going to get some incredible looking battle sequences. And I think for the most part, those lived up to the hype. Battle of Austerlitz was incredible.
Agreed.
Right? With the cannons going through the ice and the CGI that was used in those scenes, the goriness. I thought that lived up to Ridley Scott. But it's like you have the gladiator side, and then it's also the new age or like end of the career Ridley Scott that I don't give an F type of attitude. And there is a 4-hour cut of this film, right? And Ridley Scott has been teasing this. This is an Apple TV Plus release, so maybe that does see the light of day in the age of director's cuts.
He's hinted at it.
That's something that I could see maybe happening in miniseries form. If it's 4 hours, maybe 1 hour each. But I agree with you. This movie, I am a history guy. I am a history major. And when I watched this, I was like, man, I can't wait to maybe learn something new about Napoleon. And I mean, I knew every single beat that we hit in this movie. There was nothing that came to my attention where I was shocked, right? It felt like they looked at a subsection in a history textbook, a world civ book, and they said, okay, we got Siege of Toulon, good, right? End of the French Revolution, good. We got Waterloo, we got Austerlitz, and we got Invasion of Russia. Boom, we're done. And it felt like it was just jumping from one iconic moment to the next, but we didn't get to know Napoleon really as anything but a horn dog, you know? And that was like the most we got out of like learning more about Napoleon, how bad he wanted an heir and how he was a slave to Josephine. But as a historian, I was like, I want to know, I want to see more about like the bloodless revolution, right? When he comes back from exile in Elba and he comes back and it eventually leads to the Battle of Waterloo. I want to know why his soldiers felt so loyal to him and wanted to take his side. This is a man who inspires like the first age of nationalism, right? In an age where you have kings and queens that are being united through marriage across all of Europe, he's talking about inspiration and pride in his own country. How did the people actually look at him? Did they adore him? And this is the man who starts it all. So I'm just like, I want to, like, how many, we got no scenes other than battlefields and him and Josephine in the palace or at Versailles. That's literally all we get, or Paris. But the entire time, I was just like, I don't see how he was embraced by the French people. And I thought we could have just done a lot more with the actual character of him rather than just doing almost like a music biopic type of thing that we're really critical of, where there's so much to cover. Maybe just pinpoint it. And like, I know you talked about the movie, I think it was Waterloo, where it starts at the bloodless revolution and it shows like him, his loyalty from his soldiers, and it goes to his downfall at Waterloo. Make it a little bit more concise. I think he would have been more successful. Instead, it's like Ridley Scott picking his spots here. And it was a 4-hour cut. He tried to include as much as possible. When you cut it up like that, it feels like you're just jump cutting battle, fight, battle, fight.
Yeah, the editing was poor. You felt like the pacing was just so off. And you know what? Because because of that poor editing and that poor pacing, and you have what is this, a war movie epic, or is this like a documentary style? Like we're going to the events, like we spend 5 minutes on the French Revolution, then we go 5 minutes of him doing his coup. Then we got a rom-com with Josephine. Then we're back to a war epic. Then we're back to a rom-com. It's just the tone was off the entire movie, and I was just confused at parts. I was like, I'm supposed to laugh here or I'm not? You know, am I supposed to be rooting for Napoleon? Am I supposed to like him or not? Was he a buffoon? Was he an idiot? Was he a good emperor? Did his people actually like him, or did they all hate him? We only got like one part where like, oh, he gave bread to some Austrian soldiers who clearly was not liking him because they were freaking going in Russia in the cold. So no one liked him then. But all of a sudden, we're supposed to believe that, oh, I know it's true, but I'm saying based on the movie and what the tone was off, saying, oh, he could just become emperor again. The people love him that much. Like, you didn't sell me on that. So I just never knew what to feel about him the entire movie.
And I totally agree. Like, I at some points in this movie, I was starting to think that Ridley Scott is trying to like kind of diminish what Napoleon did. Where he's
the French were saying. There's like French critics right now saying like you're diminishing like French culture and nationalism.
Like he like diminishing by like even the idea, the last scene of the movie where he is in exile, right, on St. Helena, and the girl says like comes up to him, and in school she's like, oh, we learned that Russia abandoned their spot at Borodino, and that they eventually they gave up the city. It wasn't taken by Napoleon. It was like almost felt like a jab that Ridley Scott was taking. at Napoleon
Unnecessary
for some
jab.
reason. But also, when he is like this horn dog, he's acting very juvenile in some of these scenes, almost like as if he's incompetent to rule, and almost like he got in these positions because he lucked his way into power rather than earning it. Like the siege at Toulon, that's like should be this moment where it's like, oh, this guy, Brigadier General, like he is this force of nature, is destined to take control of France. But instead, it's like, oh, we're gonna be a part of the three-headed consul, and then we're gonna have Napoleon on the run before he like has his brother's backing, and before he has this military force that's gonna help him take over and become the Emperor of France. It just felt like every step you didn't really get the tactical sense of who Napoleon is until Waterloo, which is ultimately his biggest failure. I'm like,
Right.
this guy did a lot more than those 2 or 3 battles, but the way the movie is like mapped out, for lack of a better term, it's like, yeah, it's just we're just gonna hit like the highlights here. And when you compare him also, sorry, I'm rambling a bit,
We're
but
all
like with
rambling
Joseph,
tonight.
but like he's like alongside Josephine, like he's looked at as like the more juvenile character, and Josephine is almost like a Marie Antoinette type of character. Talking about the movie, the way like she's positioned in that film,
Right.
and I think
Strong
that's what he's
woman.
going for. But yeah, I kind of felt like Ridley Scott was just trying to like say Napoleon wasn't all that great.
But like at the same time, it's like this in real life, he was a like he was a genius. Like if right, like I'm not the history guy, you are, but Napoleon's like a legend. Like I know he's made his mistakes, but like and also like again, I'm leaning on you. They referred it in the movie when he's in Egypt and then he has to go home because of the affair. But and then like the council's like questioning him, saying like, "Oh, you left, like you deserted us." And then he's like, "No, no, no, you are deserting your country because we're bankrupt, and like we have so many issues back at home. Like you are the deserters, not me. I'm here to save you, and also my wife's a slut." But that's the side note.
Yeah.
But like he like actually do stuff within like France, like set up a bunch, like basically I don't know, like am I wrong
Yeah,
here?
no, he sets up like an education system,
Just
right?
yeah,
And the
exactly.
emphasizes national, like the emphasis on nationalism is huge, right? And it is like he does mean a lot to the people of France,
He did a lot
right?
of
So
good stuff. Like I know he's not a good guy, but like
but he
education
has the
system is one.
Napoleonic Code, it's a new set of laws that were instituted. He brought stability to France post French Revolution,
So
like
hard.
and like that. I think the movie did actually a good job of showing how unstable the country was following, right, the early 1789 chopping off of Louis the 14th and Marie Antoinette, and then like going to the Reign of Terror, Maximilian Robespierre, all that stuff. It's just a different type of government that is being instituted like every other day. And you have the once the directory is overthrown, you have the coup. It just seems like this should be a moment where it's like, yeah, this guy can firmly seize control, and it just never seems that way in the movie.
I I will say, again, I'm not the history guy, and I did no research going into this movie. I told myself like, oh, like you know what, I'm just gonna go in like blindfolded, like based on like what I knew previously about Napoleon from like 10 years ago in high school, in minor classes or something like that. I was just like, holy crap, like I don't remember anything, and this is not telling me anything. Like I was so confused a lot. Like how do you like he? It seemed like he got to Emperor like that, like it was nothing, you know. I really I know you like you're probably like since you know this stuff, it's a lot easier for you to follow it. But for me, because it's bouncing around every 5 minutes, like a year or two, and it's like again, you talked about the Reign of Terror to the French Revolution or whatever, flip flop. It's just like holy crap, like I forgot what happened in the Reign of Terror. Like someone give me a reminder. Like I don't know. Like I felt like everything was rushed. It just felt very rushed.
Yeah, just the only thing you had to know is that it's a time of turmoil, instability, and Napoleon brought stability. He united the country. You know, that's where you have all those factions. Like they talk about the loyalists, right, versus the Republicans here. Like Napoleon brought everyone together. Okay. Um, I do want to say, and kind of sliding off it a little bit, you brought up the tone, and I thought when you're gonna get a Napoleon movie, I was like, okay, Ridley Scott, like traditional Ridley Scott looking like Gladiator, I'm like, this is going to be, I think, an epic war movie. And you have scenes of epic war movie style, but then you also have a mixture of a couple different other films. And particularly with the Joaquin Phoenix performance, I was seeing stuff from like other historical biopics like Amadeus, where it's like you expect to see a character on screen, have them act a particular way, and all of a sudden they're so comedic that it throws you off. That's what I felt like Joaquin was doing here. And I've brought up the horniness a couple times. But this is Joaquin also turning in his second unexpectedly hilarious lead performance in a movie this year alongside Beau is Afraid. Like, I didn't think that movie and his performance was going to be as funny as it was. And this movie, I think I laughed even more than Beau is Afraid. This is like one of the funniest movies I think
Really?
I've seen all year, bro. I was cackling at some of these scenes.
I think Beau's Afraid, like that first hour, that was the fun. Like, I think that's the funniest thing I've seen all year.
Yeah, but like the performance itself and like when you have Joaquin making like goo goo gaga sounds, cat calling for his wife, like at the dinner table, him crawling under and calling his wife a slut. When he called his wife a slut, that one liner, I burst out laughing.
Yeah,
I
I
was
did
along,
too.
so I watched it with our parents and our sister, and when he said like yes and yes, my wife is a slut, I was like, this is also like almost Death of Stalinish, you know? That's another movie that came to my mind because it's like you got these French dudes speaking in American or English accents, and you got them using slang like slut as if it's 2023, you know? And in that regard, I thought like this was supposed to be funny in the first half of the movie at least, right? And that's where it's like Ridley Scott like doesn't give an F. Like he's just like, I'm doing this. I'm gonna make it funny. People aren't gonna see it coming, and hopefully that they take it the right way. For me, the comedy like landed.
Yeah, I don't know if it's just like the promo and the trailers for this and like House of Gucci, for example. It's just like unexpected, I guess, is what I'm saying. And like we were looking at House of Gucci and this is like, oh, maybe like Oscar contenders, like
Yeah,
up
trailer
to the
did not
promo.
hint at the humor whatsoever.
Like they're playing that song, like that like remix or whatever, and they're throwing on like freaking from the director of Gladiator, Alien, American
Yeah,
Gangster, The Martian. It's like all not funny movies. The Martian has his parts with the disco music, but whatever. Blade Runner. It's just like that, they're all usually grim movies. Black Hawk Down. Like why would we be expecting this? And then like he's like kind of like mixing in there, and it's like, oh wait, is that cringy or funny? I don't. Sometimes I wasn't sure. I wasn't. So,
it's like
and all like,
awkwardly funny. Like you're not.
yeah,
You feel like, hey, this is a movie about Napoleon from Ridley Scott. Am I supposed to be laughing right now? But I just like let it rip. I'm like, this is actually hilarious.
yeah. I guess just like going back to like, I guess like the pacing, tone, and everything. It just and like the 4 hour cut that Ridley Scott says he wants on Apple TV Plus. This did feel incomplete to me. It did feel jumpy, incomplete. And I'm wondering if we have that full 4 hours, like maybe like we find some sort of pacing and tone that is appropriate and it would find a balance. I'm just thinking about it, and it's just hilarious to me that Ridley Scott is the one that cut this down. He's saying no one should sit in a theater for more than 2.5 hours. I think that's hilarious to me. He's like,
Like maybe we need to.
yeah, right. But he was like, but like he had a quote saying like, I don't want like anyone's like butts hurting and like something like that. It was just like, all right, that makes sense. But why would you do that then? Like, why even say that? I just don't get it. So usually it's the freaking studio saying cut down your movie, cut costs. But this guy instead, he cuts down his own movie to make it incomplete, and also he shoots so quickly. This movie was done in 61 days. This 200 plus $1 million epic war epic. We talked about all these freaking crazy battle sequences that we have to talk about that are amazing, and he did it in 61 days. Like that is remarkable to me. So it's just like so odd. Like this guy is like so weird, and I love him, but like it is odd, and you can kind of see the faults in this movie with it.
Yes, I was, but I will say, despite like the short filming of this movie, the battle sequences like at points blew my mind. I was like, damn, this makes me want to I wish I saw it in IMAX for like the Battle of Austerlitz and for the Siege of Toulon. When I saw that, like yeah, that lives up to the hype. I thought the Battle of Waterloo was kind of a letdown. And that's also at the point where it's like you know what Waterloo means. It's the end. It's the end of the line here, right? But it's like what they do outside of the battle sequences that kind of fall flat aside from the humor. Um, I think we should talk about Joaquin more, honestly, and his performance. I compared it akin to Amadeus. I also think this is weird. Like Joaquin is taking on this guy who's known as having a short temper, very volatile, but a very charismatic leader. But Joaquin is pretty damn quiet in this movie. You know, what do you think about his approach here? Like, did you like what he did with Napoleon? Were you expecting something different, or what do you think?
I think I was expecting something different. Like again, like Joaquin's not like the funniest guy. He's a weird, quirky guy, an awkward guy. Like think about his Oscar speech talking about cow's milk or whatever the heck that was, goat's milk, I forget. But like he's definitely like a physical actor that plays crazy people, you know. And I was kind of expecting that here to kind of like take. He does have screen presence, obviously. So take that presence and that craziness, right? That psychological edge, and put it into Napoleon, someone that literally has something like a Napoleon complex named after him, right? So I was expecting that. I think we saw that. It was just like the comedy bits. Again, like I think it worked. I know we talked about it a lot already. It's just like it didn't all work for me. It didn't, and I think it just again it was all about the tone, and I just felt uneven the whole movie.
Right. And like what I also think you brought up, like the psychological aspect of a Joaquin Phoenix performance, the way he's able to internalize things. Right. This is a character. This is a person that is so well known for not internalizing. Right.
Right.
So, but what Joaquin's really good at, and I look forward to it in his performances, is like his quick meltdowns. You know how he'll just like erupt in anger or erupt in emotion. And I think we got a couple awesome scenes in that regard. Like there's like the scene where he is getting divorced from Josephine, and you see him striking her, you see him yelling at her, you see even like like the physical performance, like the jump cut to him like banging Josephine. It's like really, really violent and volatile. It's just like, oh Jesus Christ. Like I thought this movie, this performance was good. Joaquin kind of curbed it to make it more of a Joaquin performance, but less of like a true Napoleon type of figure, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. It's just so this movie. I just feel like I think Joaquin's fine. I don't. Is obviously Joaquin's one of the best actors. Like this isn't going to be in his top 10, and that's
No.
crazy to me because like Napoleon, like this is probably like I'm trying to think Joaquin. This is probably besides Joker, this is the most famous role he's ever had. Probably Napoleon.
Uh yes, like well like a either a IP
Comic book
character
or
or a historical figure.
right.
Okay.
Like this is the biggest besides Joker on a brand
Yeah, I don't
level.
know what else he's done honestly that would be in
So
that category.
yeah, so like I don't know. I guess just my expectations with that were just high as well. And going back to the
There
beginning,
are
when
expectations already when you play those characters. Like you're
yes,
supposed to live up to someone else, like a real life portrayal or a comic book portrayal. Here it's like Joaquin. Like I like seeing Joaquin just take something and make it his own. He even did that with Joker, kind of. You know, it was a
mm,
type of it's IP, but it doesn't feel IP. Right here, it's
mm,
like Napoleon. Everyone knows what Napoleon's like, so it's like, are you? And I what I give him credit for is that he's not just doing what everyone wants him to do, right? In that regard. And I think you already talked about it, like, hey, like I thought he was fine in this movie. Like I'm not gonna say he held this movie down. I think it was the way like Ridley Scott approached his character, and like Dan Scarpa approached his character when he wrote it, and to make it over the top comedic and not give it that edge that Napoleon actually had. And on the opposite side of it, Josephine, I thought they were trying to do something where it was like I said before, like almost like Marie Antoinette, where it's like she is the like I'm talking about Sofia Coppola's film, not like the actual Marie Antoinette, but the way she's like almost like a figure of female empowerment, how she is standing strong in a time of extreme oppression, right? Where she can't bear a child, she's forced into divorce, and I thought they were trying to make it um it almost felt very 2023 in my eyes, had the way they attacked or approached her character. I thought Vanessa Kirby was good, but I also thought like by making her so serious and not as juvenile as Napoleon, like it made Napoleon look worse. You know, I don't. It just seemed like is that the intent of the movie? Like, because I know Josephine's a huge influence on Napoleon, but like it just made it seem like she was the mature one and Napoleon was kind of like I don't want to say out of his depth, but he was just like he wasn't as great as he appeared to be. You know, that's the kind of vibe I was getting.
yeah, I completely agree. I think they, 2023, like that's like strong, independent woman. like someone that is relied upon by their partner, that the partner gets all the praise or the fame, like the fame or whatever. Played that to a T. And Vanessa Kirby, I think, like, because Jodie Comer was supposed to be in this until she had to drop out. Um, I think this was a
Last
better,
Duel lines up.
but like, I think Vanessa Kirby, like, if you look at her like filmography, like, think of even a small role in like Mission Impossible. She's like a broker, and she's like very powerful and strong there. Versus Jodie Comer, who, in a lot of her roles, like, she's great, and I love her. It's just that she doesn't really play like anyone that's like a strong, independent woman that you lean on, right? She's usually playing someone that's like the innocent, like, uh, uh,
Strong innocent victim like Last Duel.
victim, victim, exactly. So I think this was a better casting choice. Even though Jodie Comer, I'm a Jodie Comer stan for sure. But yeah, I think they nailed the casting. It's just like, again, I just didn't love what happened, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Um and those are like the only two characters that like hold the screen for the entirety of the movie. And that's kind of wild. Like I like there's characters at the beginning of this film, there's allies of Joaquin, his Napoleon that just come and go and we don't hear from again. Wellesley, no, Duke of Wellington, excuse me, who takes down Napoleon at Waterloo. That is basically your villain that doesn't get introduced until the third act, or like the antagonist of the movie. It just felt like it felt like I don't I, like that's it goes with the idea of that you're saying it's jumping from place to place, and there's not really much carryover aside from Napoleon, and we don't know much about Napoleon other than the fact he might be impotent, right? Like that's basically all we know about him. In that regard, I just thought like it was really shallow.
Yeah, and like with the Russian
Oh,
Alexander.
yeah. Alexander, I thought was actually he wasn't bad. I liked him.
But like then like he randomly like goes to Josephine's house, quick scene and dance, and then they just
Oh,
forget about that after.
yeah. So I did research on this. So like a big part of this movie, people keep talking about historical inaccuracies, right? So like they like for example, Napoleon firing the cannons at the pyramids in Egypt, and Ridley Scott famously said we had to show a way we had to show that Napoleon and France took out Egypt and conquered Egypt. Like that's the way we did it. We chose to do it. Screw everyone who thinks we did something wrong with that. After I watched this movie, I was trying to think of as a like historian, is there anything like major that stuck in my eyes? Like, did that really happen? And I looked up the idea that Alexander the First, after betraying Napoleon, like slept with his ex-wife, Josephine. And I was like, there's no way this is true. I looked it up, and there's definitely rumors that this actually happened. That is
Jesus.
wild. Out of anything I thought would be historically inaccurate, to have Alexander the First sleeping with of Russia, sleeping with Josephine, that was not on my radar to being factually correct at all. I like that is a wild subplot to this movie that kind of gets glossed over a little bit.
Definitely glossed
Um,
over.
because I think that could have been like you're looking for an antagonist of this movie. Oh my god, that would have been juicy, brother.
Dude, like if you're doing a movie on Josephine and like if centered more on the Josephine Napoleon rather than the war side and just sequence of events in France, that would have been like a great like movie and antagonist there, to kind of complement the war side too. Ridley Scott wouldn't be the person to make that, but someone else that could kind of complement a relationship better and maybe a better script. David Scarpa's on the script here. He's also for Gladiator 2. A little nervous. So I think that would have been an interesting story. And like other things they glossed over that I wanted to ask you is, all right. So when Napoleon freaking fires those cannons at those people in France,
Is that was before? That's when he was named after he was named Brigadier General, I believe, right?
yeah. So like, why did he do that? And why do the people like him after that?
So this is before he is named one of the three consuls, right? Like to
Right.
help take over France. So he is trying. There's still a lot of turmoil in France. This is like late 18th century. We're talking like 1795 is the Reign of Terror. So you have the Reign of Terror happens after the death of Louis and Marie Antoinette. That's where there's a bunch of instability, a bunch of different like democratic governments or republics that are being instituted, and then people fighting for power. And then the guillotine is in full force here. People are wanting to bring back people are the loyalists that want to bring back the king, right? They want a monarchy, and these other people want a democracy. And so you have the Reign of Terror is people like Maximilian Robespierre. anyone who supports the king, he's like chopping off their head. Anybody who wants to bring back the king, chopping off their head. They're enemies of the state, chopping off their head. So this is just a time of political factions that are just like going against one another nonstop. And so it's just like physically you're like you need like military aid in order to qualm like these fights.
It's crazy how like he just shot those people like what was it in Massachusetts in American history, Lexington or something.
Lexington and Concord.
What it was like the massacre.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Whatever that is, like I forget, like when the freaking redcoats shot up civilians. Like I felt the same way. Like you're not gonna like someone that just shot up civilians, no matter what terror. Like you can't trust those people. That's half the country hates you. Like,
that would be like, man, that would be important to showing like what the people thought of Napoleon, right? That's
right.
like really
The soldiers.
Yeah, you like you're thinking of, I think you're talking about the Boston Massacre, which is
Boston Massacre. Thank you.
Yeah. But this would have been important because like the entire time I'm like, okay, these people probably hate Napoleon, right? But he did a lot of good for them that Ridley Scott just doesn't talk about, right? The entire time. So you really have no vibe of what the people actually think about him. Yeah, that scene was brutal. There was a couple really gory scenes too. The first scene, the horse when it gets gutted by the cannon or the cannonball, and you have Joaquin taking it out of the horse and then like sending it to his mother. Like that was nuts. That was a hell of a way to start the movie.
That was like I did love that scene though. That was a great like warm up war scene. Toulon. I don't know how to pronounce it. That was a great warm up night scene. It like had like the Master Commander
Game
vibes.
of Thrones. I was gonna say Game
of Thrones. That's better. That's better. Like that was a sick scene because then like 30 minutes later we got the Austerlitz or whatever.
Different settings that worked really well.
Yeah, and then you mixed in Egypt, which looked okay. But Waterloo was a disappointment. I will agree with you. Like you knew the end was coming, but like I don't know, I just didn't have those vibes at all. And like the epic vibes, they tried like be unique with like how they're storming or they're charging, and then like the British are like in those circles and really fast paced close shots of the British soldiers in the circle, but that just wasn't as exciting as the previous.
Nothing was happening.
Yeah,
I was just like, this is kind of lame.
Like, are they winning or losing? Like I don't know.
The siege of Toulon, that was a huge battle. That was like that's the battle where Napoleon proves himself as like brigadier general, and like he gains like public support, and like he is driving because obviously the borders of France are a little susceptible at that time, right? With following the revolution, right, and unstable governments, like people want to take advantage of like France at that time. You have like the Spanish that are occupying like French territory, right, and even the English occupying French territory, and like Napoleon goes in and he takes those people out. Talk about like inspiring nationalism. What is the people's reaction after that happens? Like, what is the support like for Napoleon? You just have no idea. You're just trying to say this happened, and then down the line he becomes one of the consuls and eventually emperor of France, right?
Yeah, it's just like
even like the consuls disappearing because it's like a three-headed consul, right? When he is like the third one that's like asked to be a part of this coup d'etat, like how do the other two leave? Like you don't explain anything in this goddamn movie.
You just never know like what you're supposed to feel to Napoleon or like how people feel about him in the movie. So then by the end, when like at the post credits or in the final credits or before the credits, the black screen, then it shows the stats of the number of deaths at each battle. It's like I'm like, okay, so wait, we hate Napoleon. That's what we're saying? Yeah. Or like you're trying to say, like,
are you saying he was a bad leader? And like, are you like, I don't know what you're saying. Yes, like his military conquest cost a lot of lives, and he's a conqueror. Like he is not inherently a good person. But is this movie for like everybody? Is it for how the French feel about Napoleon? It's like you're just saying like you're just listing facts. That's all you're doing at the end of this movie.
Like the movie.
Yeah. Just listing facts, just listing a timeline for you. One thing happens after the other, textbook style. Awards aspirations, Ricky Flex. Do you think there's any hope for any type of awards? What do you got?
Below the line, it might do some visuals or cinematography. I think is a tough year, but Ridley Scott, I think he'll have a chance for something below the line like that. Because like, dude, like we said, the battle scenes like what do the Oscars love? They love a good war movie, like with good war scenes. Like look at All Quiet on the Western Front and that Oscar campaign that started out of nowhere last year. Again, this wasn't nearly as good as that, but below the line, it won a lot of awards below the line. I think this could at least get nominated.
Yeah. How about Vanessa Kirby? Any shot?
I don't think so. I don't think it's enough. By
Or
the way, that
Joaquin?
death was just like, oh, she's dead.
And Joaquin, this is really strong year for Best Actor. He's outside looking in.
Yeah, exactly same.
Okay. Interesting. This is tough. I didn't live up to the hype. It's just a different type of movie that we got. And I think it's gonna be interesting as we lead into scores here. What did you give Napoleon?
I gave it a 65. 65 from Ricky Flicks.
69 for obvious reasons from Dr. O.
My God. Not in the top 10 for Ridley Scott. Not in the top 10.
Not in the top 10.